Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And, oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to the end of the week. Welcome to what we like to call Friday. And we got a sound effect for that one. Hit it, man. Friday! Yes, it is. You are now at the end of the week, and we're going to get you all the way to go home time on a Friday afternoon. So thank you for joining us. You are here at Rightside Radio and pushing buttons so ably on the board. JP, hey man, how are you?
I'm doing good on this finally sunny, well, it was kind of sunny towards the end of yesterday.
It's spring
but
again.
It feels, yeah, well, at least it looks like spring. Doesn't feel like spring.
Well, this morning I got up and it was 25 degrees
I know,
outside.
I saw the sunshine. I went to go work out, and I walked out without a jacket, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to go back in.
I know, and now we have the window open in the studio.
Yep.
Go figure. It's crazy. All right, listen, we got a great show laid on for you today. I'm pretty stoked about it. Lots of things to cover, lots of ground, not the least of which is at 3 o'clock today. We got a special guest coming on. You're going to want to hear this. You may have heard about the strange goings-on down yonder in Montgomery, where Governor Ivey fired the head of the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. Well, that's Admiral Kent Davis. And Admiral Davis will be on the air with us at 3 o'clock today to give his side of the events and where he sees legislation going that is currently in the legislature right now that would basically make changes to the ADVA. And do we even want that? We'll talk about it with Admiral Kent Davis at 3 o'clock today. Stand by for that. And then at 3:30, it's Friday, man. We got to step aside from politics, step aside from all the mess and the machinations of what's going on in D.C. and elsewhere, and do a little JP on sports. So we'll do that at 3:30 with JP. And then I got a triple dipper just like filled up with stuff. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, it's a veterans affair. Yes, yes it is. And I'm talking about that whole dialogue we're going to have with Department of Veterans Affairs, former Department of Veterans Affairs Commissioner Admiral Kent Davis. I'm really wanting to hear his side on this because y'all, I am a veteran. My family are veterans. My family has benefited from the ADVA's work, and I want to know why, in God's name, it has become the center point of controversy in state government. That's at number 1 on the Triple Dipper. It's a veterans affair. And then there's number 2, where woke goes to die. Y'all, the blows are being traded. The fight is underway, and the left cannot find its footing right now, but we are literally making sure that the fight is going to continue. Just because we won the election, we ain't done. Wokeness is doing all it can to recoup, and I'm just telling you, we ain't going to let it happen. So number 2, where woke goes to die. That's number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, so we got RFK in now. Tulsi Gabbard's in now. Of course, Pam Bondi was in most recently before that. The cabinet is being fully assembled, and every single one of them, y'all, is making waves, making news, and getting stuff done. And the left cannot keep up right now. In fact, I'm not sure the right can keep up. I'm talking about the Trump team. That's number 3 on the Triple Dipper, the Trump team. Stay tuned for that one, and we'll cover down. Well, all right, let me jump on into the Rightside Way opening monologue. And I'll remind you guys, every single day, attorney Stan McDonald, a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee up in Huntsville, Stan McDonald is the sponsor of the Rightside Way monologue, and I'll tell you more about him in just a few minutes. So I mentioned it a moment ago, yesterday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was confirmed by the U.S. Senate to serve as the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. And we could do a whole show on the uniqueness of the fact that a Kennedy is back in the White House and he was brought there by a Republican, right? But I want to focus on something that he says he wants to do. You see, RFK has ambitious plans based on a series of lifelong passions to save America's kids from an over-medicated, under-exercised, overly diagnosed epidemic of fragility. And I'm glad. So this morning, I was getting ready for the show, and I found a segment of an interview with RFK in which he said that he wanted to make changes to kids' school lunches. Let's just take that, all right? School lunches. All right. I'm fine with that. I mean, what you got that's healthy and, oh, by the way, kids want to eat? Because that's the fine line here, right? You have to meet kids where they are. He strikes me as a guy who will thread that needle, right? He knows that fitness and good health, to the extent that it can be controlled, is really a mix between the have to and the want to. It's about good environments, good choices. So school lunches, well, what's on the menu? Because you can put it on a plate, but you can't make them eat it, right? And a hungry kid is still a hungry kid, whether it's because of lack of food or because the food was just awful. The least nutritious lunch is the one that's never eaten. But RFK, he hasn't even found the bathrooms in the HHS office building yet. I mean, and the liberal trolls are already trolling him. So what got me this morning was one lib who tried to school him in her post by saying that Michelle Obama had tried to address school lunches too, and the conservatives in America lost their minds. Well, it was a lot more foul than that, but anyway, that's what she said. Well, I took issue with her revisionist bit of history. It was actually a dishonest take on her part. The Michelle Obama lunches, they were unpalatable dry toast and pablum. I mean, let's look back at it. The multi-billion-dollar school lunch program forced participating schools to make changes, and hundreds of participating schools began to pull out as kids left their foods on trays and went to the snack machines in the hallway to buy Snickers and Coke. Obama lunches, they became the stuff of legend on social media as kids posted pictures of kibbles and bits that their dog wouldn't eat. 3 cherry tomatoes and a celery stick, a spoon of high-fiber meat paste on a whole wheat tortilla, a skinny carton of skim milk water. It was a failure from the word go. And more food was thrown out in an epic version of big government waste than ever before. Let's be honest. Listen, I got to tell you, there were decades of kids eating square pizza, tater tots, and applesauce with a half-pint carton of whole milk. By the way, we also drank from garden hoses, we rode in the back of pickup trucks, we ran in flat-bottom Keds, drank sugary Kool-Aid, and played outside till the streetlights came on. And we grew up strong, and we changed the world. We won wars. We put a man on the moon. We tore down the Iron Curtain. We revolutionized the world economy. The difference was that we had robust meals that we all liked, yes, but we also had things like roughhousing and scheduled PE classes and badges for the presidential physical fitness test at school, after-school sports, and then we had like that mad-hatting Red Rover thing in the parking lot, right? There were no cry rooms, there were no trigger words, there was no gender fluidity, and there was no month-long celebration of one demographic over another. We were all American kids living our best lives, and the world was better for it. We mollycoddle kids these days, and too often they're rolled up in bubble wrap and strapped to a booster chair until they can drive their own selves to school. I mean, to be sure, we grew up in a different era. There are some things that we shouldn't go back to. I mean, it would not have been uncommon back in 1975 for your dad to take a long drag off a Pall Mall cigarette and then turn up the radio and roll his eyes because the Bee Gees were on again, and then pop in an 8-track of Johnny Cash while your little 10-year-old self sat in the front passenger seat with a loose lap belt, sucking down some sugary root beer from a glass bottle. And you know I'm right. Look, I may or may not have described my own life right there. But it was always about how fast I could ride my bike, how high I could climb in that big tree. Could I figure out the Hardy Boys mystery before I got to the last chapter? Could I hit the target with my BB gun? Man, I was a whirling dervish. It was always something. School was like a chore that had to be done just to get me to the afternoons. Summers were barefoot and loose change. It wasn't meant for saving. Loose change was meant for running down to the corner store to buy a comic book and some candy. And yes, I was the kid who the store clerk would have to look at and say, "Hey kid, you gonna stand there and read all the comics or buy one?" Different times, man. Take note of the fact that I rode my bike to the store by myself. But by God, we still won the Cold War, didn't we? Look, I can joke about all this, but am I really joking? Because yesterday we had actor Kirk Cameron here on Rightside Radio. He was on the show, and he's doing amazing work right now to provide parents with good, solid, Christ-centered, conservative, values-driven options for their kids. Things like telling the truth and playing hard and treating each other well and understanding the value of faith and loving our country. It's good stuff. It's a mission worth having. Because in all of the agendas right now, kids are too often used by the left as pawns, as tools, or as means to an end. Children are a gift from God, that's sure. And that's why it's so important that we act as good stewards of the time and resources that we pour into them when they're young. It's also why it's so very important that we act as shepherds who don't just move our flock in the right direction, but we actually protect them from the wolves who prowl the outskirts of the fold. You see, right now, there is an ongoing battle for our kids. It's a real battle. And there are those who want to inculcate, indoctrinate, and vaccinate whether parents want it done or not. The fight for conservative values is not just a fight among the adults. Liberals have identified what conservatives have always known, that the next generation, the children of this society today, they are the future. And if those liberals can get their hands on our kids, sometimes literally, and tell them that they are aberrations, or they should not listen to their parents, or tell them gleefully that they should never tell their parents what happens when, the parents aren't present, or that right is wrong and wrong is right, or tell our kids that, by virtue of their skin color, they're somehow born an oppressor or an oppressed. Or in fact, the liberal mantra of the fact that the idea that biological sex they were born in is fluid. It's notional. It's a bit of choice. They can choose to be differently regardless of biology. And they can do things without our say-so. Yeah, well then they know they can destroy the values before they're even valued. Liberals know that if they can get to our kids, they can change the future adults before they become adults. And they can do all of that and more, to include telling them they should be grateful for having a sorry, dry school lunch that nobody wants to eat. So yeah, let me step back to that school lunch thing again, because I know I chased a rabbit, but here's the deal. I want to remind everybody of something. Let's talk about those school lunches and that liberal troll who was saying Michelle Obama had the great idea, because it was that school lunch rant that brought all this on. See, just last year, the liberal left of the Biden administration's Department of Education took the position that gender was fluid. That's the Department of Education. And then the Biden U.S. Department of Agriculture, the entity who holds all the money for free and reduced lunches to schools around the nation, well, the USDA decided to weigh in. And the USDA actually directed all state agencies and Food and Nutrition Act program operators to, wait for it, here's their quote, expeditiously review their program discrimination complaint procedures and make changes necessary to ensure, anyway, blah, blah, blah. What I'm saying is the USDA basically said, in essence, liberals thought it'd be a great idea to tell kids if they don't buy into the transgender ideology and their school doesn't allow it, then they won't get their lunch money. That's what it boiled down to. Does that sound like a group of folks who care about our kids? Or is that a group of folks who care more about using our kids to promote their agendas? Look, the bottom line is this. RFK just took his new job yesterday. I haven't seen the new menu for school lunches yet. Will there be one? I don't know. Nobody has. What I do believe is this. I believe he's going to promote good health. I believe he's going to try to promote good life choices. And I believe it will be couched in common sense approaches that looks at what kids need and what kids want. But it'll also have things like exercise and play and more robust living attached to it. You watch, it will. Liberals need to keep their hands off our kids. Liberals screw things up every time. Michelle Obama messed up the lunch, then the USDA and the Department of Education tried to use the lunch as an agenda. We have to be there for our precious little knotheads that we've been entrusted with, because nothing in this world is more important than them. Kids are precious, and they're a gift from God. And their lunch, let's make sure it's the right one. That's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Yeah, I don't know about y'all, but my childhood was robust, man. And was it perfect? No, not by any stretch. But I'm telling you, the things that the liberals try to say that they did and did right or want to do, and we know that every single time they have an actual agenda attached to it. The idea that school lunches would be an agenda? Come on, man. Feed the kids something they want that makes them healthy and then send them outside to play. And oh, by the way, watch them grow up strong. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, we're going to jump on in, but first I got to tell you guys. So I mentioned earlier, and I'll say it again, attorney Stan McDonald. Y'all, he is a sponsor daily of the Right Side Way monologue. Stan McDonald is a 30-year veteran in the practice of law in North Alabama. And listen, Stan McDonald, I mean, I know him personally. I think the world of him. And there's nobody out there I can think of who has done as much or more to fight for what I would call conservative values and politics that right side ruffians care about. So yeah, attorney Stan McDonald, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years. He knows how to defend your interests in every local, state, and federal court. I like to say that when Stan McDonald's on your side, you will have no greater friend, and likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. So I'm going to give you his phone number so you can call him if you need a lawyer. Here it is. Attorney Stan McDonald, the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man, and here's his phone number. 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. And tell him you heard about it on Right Side Radio. Let me do the thing. Oh, yeah. No representation made of the quality of legal service to be before the grade of the quality of legal service before the other lawyers. That was a darn good one.
Yeah, it was. I'll consider.
All right. So during the break, JP told me, he says, yeah, Michelle Obama lunches sucked.
They were off. As a matter of fact, Brian from Huntsville texted in and said, Michelle Obama's lunch menu is one of the reasons those new voters often now vote Republican. And I'm not kidding when I say I think that's what radicalized me when I was a kid, because I remember
radicalized you.
I remember in elementary school, we always had Pizza Fridays, and they were the square pizzas, and I loved them. And then one day there was no square pizzas anymore, and I didn't know why. And I remember telling my mom that, and she goes, well, there's a new president, and the first lady decided to change the lunch menus, and I was furious. I was so upset.
And thus a conservative was born.
So that Michelle Obama's lunch menu, Brian's right. That is probably what kickstarted.
What did you have on your plate for a Michelle Obama lunch?
Oh, it was like vegetables, but like the gross like vegetables, like collard greens type of vegetables, and
come on.
The whole quantity of stuff. Even if there was good stuff like chicken or corn dogs, whatever, the quantity of it got like shrinked in half. It was not very good. I oftentimes had to go up and ask for seconds because it was such a little food.
It's just it's maddening.
And I was one of the active kids like you were, and I would have to go straight from school to practice, and it's like I can't function with that little amount of food. So yeah, I agree. It's not good if the kids aren't eating the food. So I think RFK will get food that kids will actually eat, but then actually be healthy for you, because it's not the food itself; it's how the food is made. So
you have a testimony.
Yes, exactly.
All right, we're going to take text messages when we get back and kick off the first dipper. It's a veterans affair. We got Admiral Kent Davis calling in at 3 o'clock. This is an interesting story. You're going to want to, especially all y'all that are veterans. And I'll tell you, my family has relied upon the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs in the past, and me personally as a senator, I work with them very closely on a number of initiatives, and I want to know what's going on. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show goes from Huntsville back on over to Chattanooga, from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to the prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn, and even big old patches of Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. By the way, shout out to Bert from Owens Crossroads, who was here at the Rightside studio today. It was very cool. It's always cool to meet somebody who we know just through the show. So anyway, Bert from Owens Crossroads was here today, and glad to see him. That was kind of cool. And listen, there's been several of y'all that have told us that you've enjoyed getting your Rightside merch in the mail already, and I'm pretty stoked to see it. So yeah, we'd love to keep up. So if you guys are getting the stuff, and we sold a lot of stuff this week already. Like the merch store just opened Monday, and shabam, we may be having to restock pretty soon. But we got hats, T-shirts, and coffee mugs, and my favorite is those highball glasses that have the 308 bullet embedded in the glass that say Rightside Media Bulletproof Influence on them, which we've sold a number of, by the way.
Roy from Hearts will be one of them. He texted in and said that he ordered it on Wednesday, received it on Friday. Well, package not damaged, and said thank you, and also appreciated the personalized thanks note that you put in there. So.
Oh, outstanding. Thanks. Appreciate it, Roy. Thanks for letting us know. Harris from Athens says peanut butter balls and pizza squares were great. Said, not that I wasn't fed breakfast. However, after the 20 or 30-minute walk or bike ride, yeah, there you go. Depending upon when my brother's hand-me-down became available, I was hungry. Throw in recess, and those are calories. Yeah, they were. I mean, when I was a kid, I walked to school. You just look at it and go, my gosh. And I look back now, and I think it was a pretty long walk to school. I'll be honest. I mean, in my mind, I think I walked a mile one way to get to school, which as a kid was significant.
I mean, I rode my bike to school every day growing up. It's actually had one of the worst bike accidents of my life going to school. So there
Did you really?
Yeah, skidded my whole leg up. Yeah.
Jim from Athens says, where do you go? He said, Jim from Athens says, Phil, loved your monologue. Spot on. As much as I like electronics, they have ruined our youth and some adults, and we've become an unhealthy and obese nation. He said, I'm 71 years old, and I'm in the gym 4 to 5 days a week. I've had younger folks work for me on the farm that can't hang with me. It's a shame how our kids are malnourished and sedentary. Oh, okay, parents' fault, he said. No outdoor chores to do. Well, not in this studio. I happen to know this one sitting right across from me is still healthy and grew up healthy. But yeah, I would say you are onto something. Harry from Madison says, you can get the square school lunch pizzas at Fresh Value in Athens. But then he says, yuck. And I think they actually sell them with a label on that says school pizza, don't they?
I think somebody sent a picture of it.
I think they did. Yeah. We've talked about this before. Yeah. Robert from Athens says, Dear Colonel Phil, why did liberals abandon John F. Kennedy's U.S. physical fitness program? I was a kid who participated in that, and then it disappeared. Why does the left want us sick and fat? It's a great question, and I do believe you're going to see that. I think there's a very better than even chance that since John F. Kennedy started the presidential physical fitness program, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to bring it back. You watch and see. I think it's going to be good. John from Huntsville says, Phil, spectacular monologue also. Did you hear today is Valentine's Day? I did. The lovely Charlene and I are doing some grandparent time this weekend, so we went out last night. But yes, indeed, today is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. And then he wants to know, JP, do you have a sound effect for Valentine's Day?
Nope, and I don't even know what one would sound like.
I don't know what that would be.
Maybe like a Cupid harp or something. I don't know.
Just beating heart. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. Okay. Brian from Huntsville says, Michelle Obama's lunch menu is one of the reasons those now voters often now vote Republican. You read that a minute ago, didn't you? I apologize. Yeah, that's true. I'm looking at one. 2 more, and then I got to go to the phone. Scott from Athens says the kids should be drinking raw milk and food cooked in grass-fed tallow. Nice. Watch their minds and muscles swell.
By the way, did you see the Babylon Bee today? It had a headline that said RFK gets sworn in with his hand on a raw 32-ounce T-bone steak. That cracked me up.
And then Paul from Huntsville just says, you're making me hungry. Let me go to the phones real quick. Wolverine Dan, what are you doing, buddy?
Well, I'm on my way home to be with my sweetie because it's our anniversary today.
Nice. Well, happy anniversary. How many years?
Well, the same as you, my friend, 38 years.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you and I kicked our coverage.
Man, ain't never lying. Just 38 years and not even halfway there. What do you say?
Oh, God, no, it don't even feel like that. You know, Phil, I'll be honest with you. When you find someone like that, you know, you hold on tight, don't ever let go. And you know, you compromise in a relationship. You know, it's a give and take. It's not always your way. You know, sometimes you got to shut your mouth and just go with it, okay? That makes her happy. And, but bottom line is this. I agree with JFK. Look, if you're going to go out and have a beer, like I'm the neighbor, going to celebrate, get some margaritas, you know, I'm going to have to pay for that. And the way I pay for that is I exercise. I exercise every day. It's in my regimen. And we all have to do it. Some days are better than others. We have injuries here and there. We have to compensate and do a different exercise to compensate for it, then get back into your groove. Listen, Phil, nothing's free. You got to work for it.
That's exactly right, brother. There's a balance. You can make decisions, but those decisions better have some balance attached to them. And you're right. If you eat the donut, you better walk the mile.
That's right. And spiritually, if you ask God for something and you don't get it, you know what that means? That means God didn't want you to have it. And also, one thing I always do with God is say, listen, I don't want you to have to do anything for me. Just give me the ability for me to do it because it's my job. You got enough people to worry about without me.
Well, he will definitely empower for that which he calls. So,
all right, brother.
Hey, happy anniversary, buddy.
Thank you.
See ya. Man, what an audience. What good stuff. All right, listen, and I got several of y'all still texting in. One more here. John C. from Madison says, congratulations on that anniversary. He said, my anniversary is Sunday. My wife and I are married 40 years. Boy, does she put up with a lot, he says. Ain't that the truth? Not for you. I mean, for all of us. All right, listen, let me kick off a topic here. So, number one on the Triple Dipper, I'm calling this, it's a Veterans Affair. Coming up in a few minutes, we're going to have a call from a retired Navy Admiral, Kent Davis. He's had a pretty amazing career, and I'll tell you more about him in a few minutes. But the interesting dynamic is he's not just a Navy Admiral. He also spent time in the Army as a JAG officer. He also spent time enlisted in the Navy before he ever joined the officer ranks. He's kind of seen all of it. And then he was basically hired by the State Board of Veterans Affairs to be the commissioner of the ADVA, the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. People don't realize that every state has its own Department of Veterans Affairs to help facilitate the things that come through the VA from on high. There are some things that happen only federally. There are some things that have their territory within the federal, but the state ADVA in Alabama's case, it also has an impact in a big way for veterans. And there has not been, to my knowledge, there has not been any complaint. When I spent 8 years in Montgomery as a state senator, I do not recall ever having an issue with the ADVA that we had to resolve. I never saw a budget outcry. I never saw somebody complaining. I never saw constituents. Now, maybe some of y'all had a different experience. But the bottom line is the ADVA has been a rather responsive organization, so much so that I, as one of the senators who sat on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, I worked on a number of initiatives with ADVA staff. I was personally responsible for helping to start what's known as the Veterans Courts Initiative, which makes sure that when veterans come through the legal system, that they are able to be identified and tied to benefits and treatment plans and things they didn't know they qualified for. It happens all the time. That being said, I got to caveat this whole argument about what happened with the current commissioner being fired by Governor Ivey with how I feel about another position in this state. And this is where I got a bit of a quandary. I like the ADVA. I have never seen controversy with the ADVA. I have no beef with the fact that the ADVA has been apparently a well-oiled machine for many years. And Admiral Kent Davis, as the 7th commissioner of the ADVA, seems to have been doing his job right. In fact, the reason why he drew some ire from the Ivey administration is because he dared to question why some grants were going to a different department that he felt like were supposed to come through his department. I'm going to let him tell his side of the story on some of that. But the thing is, he is not hired by the governor. He is not a cabinet position that was confirmed by the Senate in the standard form. In other words, much like we see with like RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and Pam Bondi up in D.C., in the state of Alabama, we have the same things. I was constantly on the floor of the Senate voting for confirmations of the governor's cabinet or trustees to a university or whatever the case may be. And this position is actually hired by the board of the VA as opposed to the governor herself. And yet Governor Ivey fired him. How's that work? I don't know. Now, you may remember during COVID. Oh, geez, I just picked that scab, didn't I? You may remember during COVID that we have a state health officer named Scott Harris. And I got to where I was really sick and tired of Scott Harris. State Health Officer Scott Harris is the one who kept issuing proclamations that had the force of law that shut down businesses, and the governor would sign off on them. And oh, by the way, then it would get even bigger. We'd wind up having, school closures and business closures and what's declared essential and non-essential and who has to get a vaccine and do you have to wear masks and all of it. That was Scott Harris. What we discovered that we didn't know is the state health officer was not accountable to anybody. The state health officer was not accountable to the governor. The state health officer did not have any accountability, could not be impeached by the legislature. The state health officer was appointed separately by the medical association. In other words, the doctors in this state who have a lobbying group called the medical association hired their own state health officer, and then he had the force of law behind him. It was weird. The position we've got now with the ADVA, I advocated for a change to the way that the state health officer is appointed. If we're going to have somebody who has the force of law behind them and the ability to shut down businesses and do things like that, then I think that they ought to be accountable to the people. But I don't believe that applies here. And why do I say that? And the reason being, and I'm still fleshing this out in my mind, and I want to hear Kent Davis talk about it. There is a difference. The ADVA does not come in and shut down businesses and direct traffic and create law and issue proclamations like that. It is an administrative agency for the purpose of benefiting veterans and making sure their benefits and services are in place. State health officer actually crushes souls. The ADVA commissioner administers benefits. So I think there's a difference. The quandary I've got is, have I created a pickle for myself by advocating for the state health officer to have his position changed and made something accountable to the people, but I'm not advocating for the same thing for the ADVA. Now, there is legislation currently before the Alabama Senate. It's actually the guy who replaced me in the Senate, Andrew Jones. I don't like his bill. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like his bill. What I'm also hearing is his bill did not have any collaborative work from Veterans Association. I'm a member of the Military Officers Association. I'm a past member of the VFW. And I'm just going to tell you, you just don't go out there and change the Veterans Board without consulting some of the veterans groups. At that point, all you're doing is toting water for a lame duck governor. But that's apparently what he's done. And the bill's not going very well right now. But what the bill does is the bill basically takes the entire state board of Veterans Affairs, the members who were appointed by different agencies like MOA and VFW, and it relegates them to nothing more than an advisory capacity. It strips them of all their authority, and it makes the commissioner's position appointed only by the governor and answerable only to the governor. So what good is the board at that point, in my opinion? I think there's a way to work this out. I could see the governor having say in who is in there, but then the board still having authority as well. and we got to work this out. In the meantime, I got to take a break. Let's take a break right now. We'll come right back. I'm going to put a little more meat on these bones, and then we'll talk to Admiral Kent Davis coming up top of the hour. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Pulling pins on truth grenades. That's what we're doing. By the way, you can catch the show if you're not aware. You can catch the show in a variety of platforms. So yes, we are streaming online. But we're live on radio. Obviously, we got all of our radio outlets going right now. In North Alabama and of course Chattanooga and Tennessee and then down yonder in Auburn and hopefully more to come in the near future. But we've also got the ability for y'all to actually see inside the studio if you want to. You can watch the show on Facebook on 2 different accounts on X or Twitter. And then you've got Rumble and YouTube, and man, we're everywhere. So check it out. And oh, by the way, if you missed it yesterday, we had the interview with actor Kirk Cameron. Went great. We recorded that from our new podcast studio. So that went up, and I think you posted that one already. The video's out there where they can see it, right?
Yeah, the video is up on YouTube, on Rightside Media's YouTube page. If you want to go check it out. It's also on Phil's Twitter. It's pinned at the top of his Twitter profile there as well.
Awesome. Thanks, bud. All right, let me get back to this situation with the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. So coming up in a few minutes, we're going to have the former Department of Veterans Affairs Commissioner Kent Davis on. He's a retired Navy admiral, and he's speaking out now, obviously. And there's even rumor that he's going to run for governor, believe it or not. Will he? I don't know. I think that, it could certainly be a thing. The interesting dynamic here is that I totally get that because my dad, JP's granddad, actually worked for Governor Fob James, got sideways with him, left the administration, and ran against him for governor. So,
I remember seeing the post or the little campaign stuff in the garage.
Oh yeah, now obviously he didn't become governor, but I still got a couple of things that from the days when he did that say like Phil Williams for governor,
Yep.
a governor we can be proud of.
Yep.
And I'll never forget. He had a bunch of signs left over. He and I were down there in the garage. He looked at me one day and he goes, "Well, one of us has got to run for governor because we got a lot of signs."
I was going to say, if you ever wanted to run for governor, you got signs. You don't have to pay for signs. You got all of them.
I put one of them in my Senate office, and I had somebody walk in one day and look at it and look at me and go, "Should I know something?" And I said, "No, no." But yeah, the thing we got here to figure out, and I'm going to get Kent Davis to describe it for us in more detail, is what went awry, what happened, because I've got a story here from AL.com. Phil, did you go to AL.com? I did. I'll go to all these liberal trolling websites so you don't have to. But AL.com ran a piece back in October talking about the fact that Kent Davis was at sideways with the governor because he was calling out a $7 million grant dispute. And then he actually apparently filed an ethics complaint against the Department of Mental Health's director. So there was this kind of squabble, I guess you'd say, against amongst different members of the state government, and what I don't know is what happened to try and mitigate this. It may very well be the governor called everybody in and said, "Look, y'all start playing nice, or heads are going to roll." But my sense is what happened is it became a very public thing, unfortunately so. And the governor then decided she wanted Kent Davis to resign. And he said no. And then the State Board of Veterans Affairs actually met and voted for him not to resign. How about that? In other words, the board wanted the guy they had hired to stay, but then the governor said, "No, I really do want him to go." And he went and met with the governor and said, "Give me a few months to wind some things up, and I'll leave in the end of the year." And then she allegedly fired him anyway and had his stuff removed from his office. So it's a weird dynamic. We're going to talk to the man himself coming up just a moment. Admiral Kent Davis, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, I spent some time right before the top of the hour break unpacking for you the topic that we're in. I'm calling this whole section of the show, this Dipper 1, it's a veterans affair. And it is. And we're talking about the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. So I'm about to bring somebody on who's got the straight skinny, the inside story, and all of this. It's Rear Admiral Kent Davis, U.S. Navy retired. He was the 7th commissioner of the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. He was selected by the State Board of Veterans Affairs to serve in that position, which is a key point. Now, he's got a great resume. I can't even possibly begin to go into all of it. It's even longer than mine. He actually was the son of a combat wounded World War II Army veteran himself. Born in Montgomery, went to LSU, enlisted in the Navy. He got his commission as an active duty Navy officer, served on the Big Mo, the battleship USS Missouri, served on the U.S. carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. He had a great run in the Navy and then went to law school, Georgia State University, got his law degree and became an Army JAG officer, go figure. And then he went back in the Navy. And y'all, he's got deployments after deployments after deployments. Retired after 31 years. And became the director of economic development for the city of Anniston, and then served at the state level at ADVA. And he's on the phone. Let me quit talking. Admiral Kent Davis, how you doing?
Bill, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, thank you, and thanks for your service, by the way.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
Hey, Admiral, listen, I want to do something here. I want to talk about this topic about what's going on in Montgomery, talk about the legislation, about how you wound up leaving your position. But before we do that, I really think it's fair for the audience to hear what is the ADVA. And I say that because as a state senator, I became more acquainted with the ADVA by being in Montgomery, and I'm a veteran myself. Can you unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. There is a lot of confusion. People confuse the federal VA, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, with the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. Very distinct roles. I even go online and I've seen some comments. People say, yeah, we need a bill to reform VA because the medical system is horrible. They need to reform that. And my disability payments are always messed up. State has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And I've even corrected some veterans about that. So the federal VA takes care of short-term medical needs of veterans through their hospitals and clinics and vet centers, which are mental health counseling centers. And they also handle those individual payments of things like disability compensation, GI Bill. The states, all 50 states and 5 territories, have their own departments of Veterans Affairs with a completely distinct role. One of their primary duties is long-term care for veterans. They all run a system of state veterans homes, and that's the case here in Alabama. There are 5 long-term care facilities, state veterans homes. They also operate kind of as the customer service arm of the entire Veterans Affairs process. In Alabama, there are over 60 county-based veteran service offices that free of charge assist veterans with anything veteran-related. We also assist the federal government with the running of veteran cemeteries. The goal is to have a veteran cemetery within 75 miles of every veteran in the U.S. The eventual goal is to have about half of those cemeteries run by the federal government and half run by the state governments. And then many states offer additional benefits, educational benefits, tax breaks, and things like that. So very distinct roles between the federal VA and the state VAs. Okay. And I must say, in most cases, you hear good things about the state VAs. The criticisms, whether they're justified or not, seem to be about the federal VA, and that confuses people. And that's why I've heard some comments that, yeah, we do need to reform things through things like this bill, but they get the two entities mixed up.
Yeah. All right. That's perfect. And listen, that describes my interactions. And as a state senator, I'll tell you, I served on the Senate Committee for Veterans Affairs. And I also was instrumental in working with some of the staff of the ADVA to help develop what's known as the Veterans Courts Initiatives in the court system here in Alabama as a former state senator. So I get it. I love your department. I don't think I ever knew, or even cared for that matter, that your position as the commissioner was not actually retained or confirmed in the usual manner that a cabinet position would be. It's totally different. Things kind of got sideways this past fall. What in God's name happened between you and Governor Ivey and the Department of Mental Health and all of it?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The Commissioner of Veterans Affairs for the state of Alabama has never been a political appointee. And the reason was, in 1945, at the end of World War II, it was specifically set up to be a nonpartisan, apolitical, independent agency to take care of the state's veterans. The thinking was, shouldn't be about Republicans and Democrats. It should be apolitical, nonpartisan. It's been that way for 80 years. And I got to say, it's worked very well as a model. So here's what happened. We have a horrendous problem with veterans' mental health in the state. Everybody seems to be acknowledging that now. There were several efforts over the past few years to increase the state's assistance with veterans' mental health. We had problems with the federal VA. They can't hire enough mental health staff in Alabama. Many of the centers are at like 50% staffing levels in mental health. The federal VA can refer veterans out to what's called community care, to private practitioners, but the problem was we have probably amongst the lowest availability of mental health providers in the country. So we sought to help some of the nonprofits in the state by funneling some grant money, some opioid settlement money, and other assets to those nonprofits to just beef up the availability of mental health services. We were actually seeing wait times for a veteran in crisis who might be suicidal of over 60 days to get an initial appointment for mental health. Well, it's obvious what happens. You tell a veteran, yeah, we'll get you an appointment in 60 days. What happens? Unfortunately, a lot of those veterans are likely to take their own lives. And that's why Alabama had usually the lowest or second lowest towards the bottom rate of veteran suicides. I mean, the bad end of the statistics.
Wow, yeah.
We were always at the bottom. It was a real crisis in Alabama. There was a grant program through the American Rescue Plan Act, $7 million, that we thought was going great. And we had a partnership with the Alabama Department of Mental Health. We were on track, we thought. Decisions were made about the nonprofits that were going to get those grant funds. And then pretty much at the last minute, the Alabama Department of Mental Health, who we were paying, pulled out of that agreement.
Just pulled out of it.
Pulled out of it. No time really to save the program. Long story short, it was investigated by the finance department. They came back and said, we couldn't find any problems. I talked to the finance director. He said, couldn't find a conflict of interest. Your process was good. I even got congratulated because we pulled out all the stops on short notice and found an alternative source of funds. Basically, I had to take the $7 million out of our operational budgetary funds to fund the grant. We found a new partner, Troy University, who was great, and they're carrying on in distribution of those grant funds now. But mental health had a problem. I think there were some personality conflicts, frankly, with some of the grant recipients, but it left us in a lurch. There were some other concerns by my bosses. The Commissioner of Veterans Affairs is chosen by the State Board of Veterans Affairs, and by law is appointed for a 4-year term and can only be dismissed for cause by that State Board of Veterans Affairs. Some of those members came to me in July of 2024 and said, we have serious ethics concerns with how that all played out. They related them to me. I told them, okay, here's what the state ethics code says. If an agency head is made aware of ethics concerns, they have a 100% obligation to report those concerns to the Ethics Commission to look into it. And it's up to the Ethics Commission to decide if there's a problem there.
And I want to point out something too, that you're not only in the position you were, but you also have a law degree and pretty much understand the adherence to state law in that regard.
Yeah, that's right. And ironically, Phil, I was actually a federal ethics attorney.
Okay. Okay.
That was my full-time job at one point for the federal government. So I knew the state law. I had been a city manager in Anniston and had to face ethics issues before, and it's a routine issue. You report things to the Ethics Commission. Sometimes they come back and say, nothing there. Thanks for reporting it to us. Sometimes they do an investigation. Sometimes they indict people. But that's not the job of the agency head. It's up to the Ethics Commission to make a determination.
Well, listen,
state law says. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hate it, but right now we're gonna run out of time on the ability to get this whole story done. But the bottom line is, you did make the report, and then next thing you know, the governor's calling for your head. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. So the state law says if an agency head fails to report ethics concerns that are brought to his or her attention, they're guilty of a misdemeanor crime. So I reported it as required by the law. Okay. And ended up getting a pound of flesh extracted from me.
So the governor, now I got to ask you this, and then we're going to have to take a break. So I've got about a minute and a half here on this section. But the governor is not the one who hired you. You're not a member of her cabinet per se. And yet the governor chose to try and fire you, but then the State Board of Veterans Affairs came back and said, vote of confidence, we don't want him gone. And they chose to keep you. Am I right?
That's right. They basically put me through an inquisition, several hours in a public, open meeting. I answered every question, and then they took 2 votes in committee and then the full board, and both votes were unanimous. First to exonerate me and the department, and then to ask me to stay and fill my term as commissioner.
And then next thing I know, I'm reading that the governor's staff sent somebody over, removed your state laptop, and took all your stuff, and basically said you're done anyway. Am I right?
That's right. She exercised what she called supreme executive power and said, I don't care what the board said. I'm removing you, and my power is the supreme executive of the state.
I know that you've retained legal counsel, and if there's things going on that you don't want to talk about, then I understand that, because I am an attorney myself. But when we get back from this break, I'd like to hear where that has gone, and then I want to touch on this legislation that's out there now, because now that I'm talking to you, I'm even less in favor of it. Admiral Davis, hang on through the break. We're going to come right back and pick this right up where we left off. All right?
Thanks.
All right. All right, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We're on the line right now. This is like one of the crazy stories I've heard of, and I've seen a few crazy things in state politics. Y'all stay tuned. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, with Rear Admiral Kent Davis. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Man, saving the world one soundbite at a time. For those of y'all watching the live stream of the show, you just got to see my grandson come in the studio. That was kind of cool. I didn't know that was going to happen, but that's always fun. Hey, we're going right back to the phones right now with Rear Admiral Kent Davis, retired. He is the, now former 7th Commissioner of the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. Hey, Admiral Davis, let me ask you this. I can reshuffle some things here on the show. Do you want to stay on a little bit longer past this next break? Because we only got about 5 minutes for the next break, and I'd be glad to keep you on a little bit longer to keep going on the story. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what we'll do then. We're going to talk here a few minutes. We'll take a break, and we'll come back and kind of wrap up at that point. But before I go too much further, I just got to know, Governor Ivey kind of made a spectacle, in my opinion, of and I've known her for years, and I've enjoyed working with her, but I don't know what was happening on this situation. But it was a rather public termination, and your attorney made mention that there was potential for legal action. Can I ask what the status of that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So my attorney, John Saxon, a Birmingham-based attorney, is working on a complaint now, and it'll be filed soon.
Okay.
I don't know of any other option. I really don't have any other option at this point. And, citizens are allowed to avail themselves of the protections of the third branch of government, the judicial process. So that's where I'm going.
Well, and I'm sorry to hear that, but I certainly understand. So there's that bit of somewhat breaking news. Let me ask you, as things have transpired, have you heard any more from the governor's office? Did she ever reach out to you after the termination?
Phil, I've never talked to the governor about any of this.
Never once?
He is not the one that contacted. Not once.
Okay.
In all of this, the only contact I've had with the governor in the last few months since this all started was I was on September 9th over at the governor's office when they demanded that I resign. And I spent about an hour and a half with her chief of staff and legal counsel. The governor opened the door to the conference room and for about 15 minutes looked at me and said, I hope we can work something out to avoid a special called meeting. That was the extent. That is the entire conversation that I've had with the governor over all of this. All the notices I got were from a legal assistant over in the governor's office. Not one substantive conversation with the governor.
Holy crap. All right, so I did not know that. So there's never been a time when she asked you to sit down in the room with the Department of Mental Health and try to work out the issue that caused all of it to start?
No, never.
Never once.
So I offered that in that September 9th meeting to her chief of staff and legal counsel.
All right. Well, there's talk right now that you're going to run for office. Is that going to happen?
It's funny. I'm getting a lot of encouragement, and I've just politely told everyone that I would strongly consider some run for office because, frankly, given my political leanings, which probably I share with you, I'm kind of fed up with the state of affairs in Alabama, and I think the state needs some outsiders to come in and shake things up in a populist style.
Well, I don't disagree. And, I gave a story on the air earlier. My own father was the finance director for Fob James. He and Governor James had a falling out, which was of no fault of my dad's. And my dad decided to run against him. So
wow.
He didn't get elected to governor, but I can certainly sort of sense the feeling of being in the state government and then leaving and then deciding to go back and run against the ones who were the cause of you leaving. Now let me ask you this. We're going to come back in a minute and talk about this legislation that is currently before the state legislature. It's actually being carried in the Senate by the guy who took my place in the Senate when I chose not to run again. Andrew Jones got the seat. Have you ever been approached by Andrew Jones? Did he ever ask or solicit your advice or anyone from the State Board of Veterans Affairs for that piece of legislation?
Definitely not me, and I'm not aware of any contact he's had with the state board. In fact, that's one of the concerns I hear constantly in the veteran community is the rushed and secretive nature of this bill. He acknowledged on Capitol Journal that it was drafted solely by the governor's office. He didn't draft it.
Okay.
It was filed on a Tuesday. The next morning, rushed through a committee, and they tried to get a Senate floor vote the very next day in an attempt to overturn 80 years of structure and processes for the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. And about 72 hours, and everybody's scratching your head saying, why the rush?
Well, listen, the music's playing. That means I'm going to a break. But, Admiral, if you'll hang on, we're going to finish this conversation right after the break. Is that good?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. Y'all, I mean, it goes from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. It goes all the way down to that pretty little town on the plains called Auburn. And yes, it does include big old patches of Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. All right, we're going back to the phones here. There's a piece of legislation that is currently underway in the Alabama State Senate and House. In the House version, it's House Bill 154 by, I'm not sure who the House sponsor is, but it's Senate Bill 67, sponsored by Senator Andrew Jones. And it basically would have the effect of dissolving the State Board of Veterans Affairs, in a sense, taking the commissioner's position, making it a political appointment. On the phone right now is Admiral Kent Davis, who most recently was the 7th commissioner of the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. And so, Admiral, the bill right now, you just told us right before the break that as far as you know, the bill was drafted for Senator Jones by the governor's office and that no Veterans Association's input was there. Is that right?
That's correct. He said that on Capitol Journal on December 20th, and I was in a House committee meeting the other day listening, and all of the veteran service organizations said we were never consulted on this at all. It was sprung very quickly and surprised everybody. Wow.
Well, it's never a good form, and I don't understand the process by which that happened. Me personally, just so you know, I'm actually a member of MOA, a Military Officer Association. I'm a past member of VFW. And you know, a 30-year veteran. I'm the son of a veteran, and the grandson of a veteran, and the dad of a veteran. So I don't get it. It sounds like there was no veterans input in the bill.
No, not at all, apparently. And there was an attempt to rush it through. I think a lot of the veterans groups feel like it was an attempt to ramrod it through before anybody could figure out what was going on with it. But I'm proud of the veteran community. They responded pretty quickly and said, "No, time out. Wait a minute. Don't we get a say in this at all?"
Well, and that's by the way, that's some of the best legislation comes when the stakeholders jump in and get to the State House and actually make themselves known. And I've seen some things that were considered to be non-controversial. Suddenly you find out they are controversial. So I don't know if Andrew Jones just didn't recognize the extent to what he's doing. He's not a veteran. I know that for a fact. But I also look at it and think, okay, or was he just doing the bidding? And by the way, our mutual friend Becky Garrettson just texted in and said that it's State Representative Ed Oliver is the one carrying the House version of that bill. So
that's correct.
Let me ask you, I understand they debated it for a while on the Senate floor. I've been there many times for filibusters and the machinations of government and watching things happen. And I'm understanding there's a bunch of amendments that got tacked on. Were they good amendments or bad amendments? What do you know about the amendment process so far on this bill?
Yeah, there are at least 9 amendments now, I've heard, and I've heard there might be as many as 14 now being proposed.
That's a new bill.
Unfortunately, most of the amendments are aimed at tweaking the membership of the State Board of Veterans Affairs. Now, the one criticism that I think is legitimate that I've had is that's a big board. It is a really big board, 17 members by law now. That's at some point you become unwieldy. And I've always said you might want to consider paring that board down to a more manageable size, 10 to 12 people. It's always important to look at diversity, both geographically, demographically. But they're now back up to, they started with 9 members of this reconstituted advisory board taking away their power. And now I think they're up to 15 again because they keep adding in mandatory members of the board. So I think that's a bad idea. So the amendments seem largely aimed at doing worse damage to the bill, and they're not addressing the substantive issues of taking away the substantive power of the State Board of Veterans Affairs and politicizing all of those positions, the commissioner and the state board members. I personally think that's a mistake. I think there's a hybrid that you could come up with that gives the governor, other politicians a strong say, but also gives a strong say to the veteran community in running veterans affairs in Alabama. And there's a great analogy there, by the way, with the Alabama Department of Public Health that they went through last year.
Yep. They really did. And the governor did not take the lead on asking for that position to be brought into the fold. In fact, it kind of got stymied in part because the governor's office didn't really provide any measurable support for it, if I recall.
That's right. You may remember there was backing off of the original intent. There was an original intent to make the public health officer, the state health officer, a political appointee. And then, much like this, a very specialized area in taking care of a particular segment of the population, the end result was, well, we're not going to change it that much. The state health officer will still be appointed by a board of medical experts with just a little bit more political oversight. I would hope that cooler heads would prevail in this and a recognition this is a very specialized area. The model has worked very well for 80 years. Alabama gets accolades for some of the things we were doing in Veterans Affairs at the state level. I think the lieutenant governor said it well. He said, if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Yeah.
You can always
great point.
tweak things and find a little bit better.
Great point. The lieutenant governor recently came out in absolute disfavor when it comes to the bill. And I'll be honest with you. I think right now what you've got is a bill that looks like it's on the verges of death. And I'm surprised he got it to the floor as quick as he did. But nonetheless, we'll wait and see how this process develops. I mean, he's got what amounts to now. He's going to have to do a substitute bill. He can't just carry this heavily amended bill and call it the same thing. He's going to have to draft a substitute at some point and drop it in on top of it and get that done. But so let me talk about the actual position you held. This bill not only does away with the potential for the veterans associations to have true impact and authority in the ADVA, but it also takes the position out of their hands that you were in and hands it to the governor solely and makes it a political appointee, correct?
That's right. That's absolutely right in its current form.
Was there ever a time, and here's the question I have for you, was there ever a time when you served in that, or to your knowledge, the ones who served prior to you, that if the governor had called and said, I need to work with you on something, that you wouldn't have been able to do that?
Not at all, but I'm going to be brutally honest, Phil. So in 5.5 years as commissioner, governor was invited by law. She's the chair of the State Board of Veterans Affairs. Never chaired a meeting, never participated in a substantive discussion. There are about 70 facilities of the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. The governor has never visited a single one of those. No real interest in Veterans Affairs until a few months ago when this retaliatory streak started. Most veterans say, okay, you got retaliation against Admiral Kent Davis. Now this bill seems to be retaliation against the State Board of Veterans Affairs for unanimously voting to retain me. Honestly, that's what I hear in the veteran community.
Yeah.
But no interest, no participation by the governor up until recently. Now all of a sudden there's this sudden interest in, quote, improving ADVA. Never heard anything but accolades, good reports. And I do find some of the substantive reasons that are being touted for this bill a little suspect. They keep saying, oh, it's important to raise the commissioner to a cabinet level to stress the importance. Well, we proposed this several years ago. It wasn't me. It was actually the executive director of AlaVetNet, which is a interagency cooperation group, and the governor said no several years ago. So I don't know what the sudden change in tone is. I keep hearing that this is aimed at improving services of the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs, but nobody seems to give specifics. What services need improving? And there hasn't been a lot of interest. I've heard that, oh, this is about oversight of finances. Well, okay, we have a lot of oversight, probably more so than any other department right now. Every year we have to brief the governor's finance department in detail for budgetary input. Then it goes to the legislature for a detailed review. And last year I did a presentation for them on every line item. Then it goes back to the governor for final signature. There's not a lot of discretionary spending in the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs.
No, there's
only about 1%.
There's really not.
From the general fund.
Yeah. And I've seen it in the general fund
50%.
Multiple times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
about 1% from the general fund and about 50% from the federal government based on strict formulas, heavily audited by the State Board of Examiners, the State Auditor's Office. We've passed every audit with flying colors, no findings, unlike a lot of other agencies. We're inspected by the federal VA, the State Public Health Department, and many other agencies. So I don't understand that. We need more oversight. We have more oversight in that department than I think any agency.
Well,
The other reason I hear is,
Admiral,
go ahead, Phil.
I want to say we're going to have to wind it up here because I got to head to the last break, and I want to tell you, first of all, I appreciate your time and your candor, and your service. But the reality is this bill is still floating. Let me ask you this just real quick with about a minute left. What are you hearing right now in terms of, does the bill have the votes, in your opinion, to pass?
I don't know. I hear that they are intentionally taking a pause because a lot of senators and representatives have said, wait a minute, time out. We need to take a closer look at this. This is not exactly what we were told originally. So I salute them for carrying the bill over, soliciting input, and I hope they continue to listen. What I really wish they do is study this issue for another year, maybe put together a committee to say, how can we improve things? Let's not rush into this. There's no imminent problem that they need to address. Look at it, and then next year come back with some improvements.
Well, we'll see. I've seen some bills take 2, 3, 4, and 5 years to pass. And then I've also seen some, like what you just described, come to the floor described one way, get debated, you find out there's more, then you start hearing from constituents, and then you realize what you've got on your hands is a hot potato that nobody needs to deal with, and why are we trying to break something that's not broken? Listen, Rear Admiral Kent Davis, again, thank you for everything. Thanks for making time today. We're going to stay in touch on this, and you've also got all my contact points, so if you see something else happening, just let us know, okay?
Absolutely, Phil. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. All right, that's it, man. Listen, this is a weird deal. And this is by the way, don't think this is something that's like abnormal. You've never seen anything like this, a piece of legislation that has problems. Oh, it happens every year. But this one's a little weirder than normal because this one resulted from the termination of an employee who you look at and realize maybe she didn't actually have the authority to terminate. It became a public spectacle that didn't have to be public. He's telling us on the air he never had the contact with the governor's office that would have warranted the kind of discussions that they didn't have, basically. And then you also look at all the things that have transpired since then with legislation drafted by the governor's office to try and go back and fix the place that all it did was really draw the ire of the. This is like a political hit job, is what it feels like. And I have to question how much of this is coming from staffers of the governor, how much is coming from the governor herself, and is any of it even needed? That's crazy talk right there, I know, but there you go. That's state politics for you. All right, we're taking a break right now. We'll come back and get some text messages and get caught up. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Pulling pins on truth grenades. I had somebody talking in one ear and the headphones going in the other ear, and I didn't know what was happening. All right, that was a great interview with Admiral Davis. It's not often that I take a segment and decide to just push everything back so I can get more out of it. But yeah, that was a great segment. Let me grab a few text numbers there for you. Gary from Leicester, Alabama says, tells me to run for governor. No, just not. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. That's very thoughtful, but that job eats people. Mike from Florence, Alabama says, Valentine's Day sound effect. Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye. Ooh, let's not.
Thanks for your thought, though.
Got a little Barry White action there. Hey, baby. I got to go to the phones real quick. Brian from Huntsville's on the line. Hey, man, how are you?
Doing pretty well since I'm here with my family and everything. But to our service members out there being deployed or are deployed right now, away from their families on Valentine's Day, that won't get to hold hands with them like I get to. I just want them to keep in mind that we all love you and your families. And you get a family behind that. I can sum it up to them all. Happy Valentine's Day, and thank you.
Good stuff, Brian. Appreciate you, man. Bless you. That's good stuff. Yes, I have personally missed birthdays and school events and holidays. I will tell you this. The interesting thing was I was blessed on both my deployments to leave right after Christmas and to get home right before Christmas. So that was actually, timing-wise, was pretty incredible. But I can remember growing up and, Dad not being there for things because he was gone. I know that they can say the same about my granddad. And my granddad, gosh, we got it different nowadays. My granddad, he left in 1942 and he came back home in 1945. That's just the way it was. Other text messages. Let's see what we got here. Chris from Starrett, Alabama. He says, like you said, the ADVA, the Veterans Affairs, and the State Health Officer are two different positions. They ought to be administered differently. Anyone who can't see that needs help. Okay, there you go. Paul from Athens says, I wonder if this firing about the Admiral is part of the forming of new bureaucracies trying to get back on the government gravy train. I don't know what you mean by that, Paul, and I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm saying I'm not sure where you're going with that. What I do know is it appears that the Department of Mental Health had money that they had already attributed to use for Veterans Affairs, and that caused the problem because they couldn't get to it. And I don't know what the conflict of interest that he talked about was, but I'm sure somebody does, and we're going to find out. Gary from Madison says, why doesn't Huntsville have a veteran cemetery? I don't have an answer for you. I'm not sure how to answer that.
They don't?
I'm curious. Now, the veteran cemeteries are different. There's a beautiful one down at Montevallo. I believe there's another one. The goal is to try to have them within 75 miles-ish of every veteran. We've got one in central Alabama. We've got one in South Alabama. I think that's in Baldwin County. And I believe there's talk of one in North Alabama, but I don't know. Kevin from Hartselle says, I'll vote for him. There you go. Thomas Mathen says, for the future of veteran-friendly service members to be served well in Alabama communities, it seems, yes, I'm not going to say the acronym, everybody knows what it means, wrong, basically, to diminish veteran input and control the ADVA. There you go. You got it. TL from Huntsville says, Phil, thank you for having on Rear Admiral Kent Davis. I had concerns about this power grab by Governor Ivey early on, but this discussion makes me even less happy with Governor Ivey than I was before. In my opinion, she can't retire soon enough, he says. Strong arm fast tracks on bad bills seem to be Ivey's infamy. Same thing happened with the gas tax. Yeah, and listen. So, all right, TL, first of all, I hated the gas tax. And in the first go-round, while I was still in the Senate, I was the last person in the order of march there, as they called the roll, that killed the gas tax when they tried to do it the first time. I do not appreciate the gas tax. I thought it was wrong. But I will say this. A governor's job is to get in front of some good things and have agenda items and press for them and bring the weight of the office. Look what Trump's doing right now in D.C. So I don't fault Governor Ivey for having a thing that she wants done. The question I've got right now is why she wants it done. She can ostensibly make the claim that the gas tax is going to help build roads, even though I hate the fact that we have a gas tax. At least she's got a backing reason for it, and she got out in front of it and she talked about it. She is saying boo about this thing with ADVA. She's just got a senator doing her gig for her, running legislation that her office apparently wrote, we think, and nobody's being given any credible reason as to why this is truly necessary. So the fault in this lies with the lack of transparency and the lack of candor on the part of the governor's office. It just appears spiteful. JT Lacey Springs says, what do we have?
He says, do we now have Governor K. Biden? She's doing jackassy.
Oh my gosh.
But that's the thing. Like, we're calling balls and strikes. We didn't like having a lame duck president when he had a D next to his name. We don't like it when she has an R next to her name. So it's yeah, I see a lot of the same things.
There you go. Good word. And then last one, Harry from Madison says, when my son got out of the Navy last year after serving on the USS Green Bay in Japan, he struggled with a response when someone thanked him for his service, and we discussed it, and he came up with a great one. He simply said, thank you for your support. That is a great line. All right, coming up next, we move the order of March, but we're going to do some JP on sports. You guys stay tuned. We'll change the topic and change the tone. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Welcome to hour number 3 on a Friday, on a Valentine's Friday, by the way. And we're glad you're with us. Look, I called an audible. You see, that was a sports term. You see that?
That was very good.
That was very good.
That was clever.
I called an audible. So I called an audible and
Omaha. Omaha.
Chicks dig scars. Okay, so I called an audible and pushed the segment back a little bit to get extra time with Admiral Davis while I had him on the line. I think it was worth it. I mean, I'm pretty sure he dropped a few bombs in the middle of that are going to be newsworthy. But we got a thing we're going to do, because on Friday afternoons, you know the deal, we break it up a little bit. We set aside politics. We set aside the tone of, cultural grabs and all of it. And we do a little thing we like to call JP on Sports. JP on Sports. All right, so JP is actually a co-host of his own radio show on Saturdays called Off the Bench on the Ump in Huntsville from 9 to 11 on Saturday mornings. And it is like a sports guru. And just so you know, coming up next week, we're going to add a new podcast to the Rightside Media family. And it's going to be called Out of Right Field with JP. And it's going to be culture, commentary, and sports all wrapped together. Am I right in saying that?
That is correct. Conservative issues through a sports lens. So there you go.
I tell you what, at some point during this segment, if you want to put the new logo for your podcast up there, show the world.
Sweet.
All right, but yeah, we look forward to that. That's going to be just one more addition to the podcast lineup, the content for online, and check it all out. In the meantime, we break this segment up into 2 parts. The first segment is called the 3 and Out. He picks the 3 biggest stories he thinks are out there in the world of sports as we know it. And then we come back from the break, and he has the 2-minute warnings where he gets to run 2 minutes, and I got a timer and a buzzer on anything he wants to run through on sports. All right. That's enough of me talking, dude. It's your segment. 3 and Out. Go.
Well, happy iBob Eve to everybody out there that celebrates. By the way, I've seen some people talking about the Iron Bowl basketball is a lame name. The Iron Bowl is the football game. You can't call it the Iron Bowl. I think that's stupid. I think the Iron Bowl basketball is awesome. Until we have a better name to use. I've seen somebody float out there the Yellowhammer Classic, though, which is a pretty good name. But yeah, as of right now, it is the iBob. And it is the biggest game in SEC basketball history. It's the first ever 1 versus 2 in SEC basketball history, by the way. It's also only the 6th 1 versus 2 between 2 teams in the same conference ever. This is also the first 1 versus 2 since 2021, so it's been a little bit. And it's between Alabama and Auburn. So not only is it...
War Eagle.
Roll Tide. I didn't notice the shirt I've worn today.
I did notice the shirt you wore today.
So not only is it, one of the few 1 versus 2s ever, and the first in SEC is between 2 rivals. So I think it's fair to say that it's going to be a big, big game. College game day is going down to Tuscaloosa tomorrow, so the entire college basketball nation is going to be watching the biggest game so far this year. A couple of things, though, I'd like to point out for fans to watch out for. I think the 2 players to look out for in this game, first would be Aiden Holloway on the Alabama team, which I've talked about before. He transferred from Auburn, so that adds a lot of intrigue and storyline to this game. But also, he's been on a great roll lately. He's shooting 42% from 3 this year. So he's been one of the best shooters, if not the best 3-point shooter statistically in the SEC. He also is coming off of 18 points against Texas and shot 3 for 6 from 3 in that game. So he's coming off of a big game. So he's riding the hot hand. We'll see if it continues against his former team. But then also on the Auburn side, you got Chaney Johnson, who, by the way, former UAH player. He transferred to Auburn from UAH. He won Gulf South Conference Player of the Year at UAH, and he's been playing really, really well for Auburn. He's coming off the bench, but he's scored 20 points in his last game against Vandy. He shot 9 for 10 from the field, so he's like their 6th man, but he's like the perfect guy for Auburn to give Jani Broom a break and put him in, and there's no drop-off, really. I mean, he's been playing very, very well lately, so those would be the two players I would say to watch out for in this game. And then just, broad stroke game-wise, Alabama obviously, I mean, they're a 3 and layup team. They're going to shoot the 3 and shoot the layup. So if they're coming out and they're shooting hot from 3, it's going to be really hard to stop them. So Auburn really needs to run Alabama off of the 3-point line in this game and force them to take hard layups to go in with Jani Broome and Dylan Cardwell in the paint. Take contested layups, make it hard on them. And then if you're Auburn, just give Jani Broome the ball. And then if anything else goes wrong, you got guys like Tahad Pettiford and Chad Baker-Mazara and then Chaney Johnson obviously off the bench. So I'd say the game plan is give it to Jani, and then if something else goes wrong, you got pieces around him to help out there as well. So it's going to be a great game, can I just say.
Tip-off time is what?
3 o'clock Central Time. It'll be right in the middle of the day. I have no idea what to predict. I feel like it could go so many different ways. And then you got 2 great teams, so if they both bring their A game, it's going to be a neck-and-neck game the whole way. And it's just fun. Can I just say it's just fun that, the game of the year so far is between Alabama and Auburn, 1 versus 2. It's awesome. I feel like other rivalries like Duke UNC and then you have Michigan Ohio State in football, those are kind of stuck to their sports. Duke UNC football, nobody really cares. Michigan Ohio State basketball, nobody really cares. But Alabama and Auburn, I feel like in all sports is a neck-and-neck, fierce, competitive rivalry. So I think it's awesome that 2 of the best teams right now come from Alabama, and it just makes the rivalry that much better.
So let me ask you this real quick before we leave that topic. So you talked about the fact that Bama is strong from outside the paint. They're shooting the threes and the layups, so inside and outside shots. But who has the better defense of the two? I mean, objectively speaking, which team has the better defense?
Auburn does.
Okay.
Objectively and statistically, Alabama has struggled to not foul as much either. They've gotten better throughout the season, I would say, but still, I mean, objectively, when you got Jani Broome and Dylan Cardwell, and then you got lengthy guys like Chad Baker-Mazara, and then Tahad Pettiford, who's been a great defender. Auburn, objectively, has the better defense. But it's just, like I said, it's going to come down to if Alabama is hot from 3 and, can't really miss like we saw against Texas, which worries me as an Alabama fan. We got all of our good threes out in that game. but
used up all your threes.
Yeah, no. We're going to have to take a loan from like the 3 bank or something for this game. But if Auburn can run Alabama off the 3-point line and make them take layups.
Loan from the 3 bank. That's pretty funny.
Jani Broome is a presence in the paint. So run them off the 3 and then make them shoot layups over Broome and Cardwell.
And where are they playing?
In Alabama, in Tuscaloosa.
So they're in Tuscaloosa.
Yep.
All right.
And then the last game of the year will be in Auburn. So another big one to watch for.
Was that just the first one of your 3 and out?
That was. Yeah.
All right, number 2, what do you got?
Well, we got another pretty good rivalry matchup with Vandy and Tennessee. I feel like there's a lot of rivalry games in the conference. Got Ole Miss, Mississippi State too as well. But both of these teams are coming off of losses. Vandy just lost to Auburn at home, which lost to the number 1 team. Not much to hang your head about. But then Tennessee also lost at Kentucky, which is another loss not to hang your head on. So, both teams are coming off of losses. However, they're to good teams. And with a rivalry game, just like, we talked about Alabama and Auburn, it's always going to be a great game, between 2 rivalry teams and state teams. So this game will be played in Knoxville, though. So Tennessee has the home court advantage in this one. So I would expect Tennessee to win this game, honestly. Even though Vandy's a good team, we saw Tennessee bounce back from losses like they lost and then they came back and then beat Florida by 20 after losing to the same Florida team by 30 earlier in the year. So, they know how to bounce back from losses. So I don't think this Kentucky loss will hurt them much at all. So I think Tennessee is going to win this one. And I don't even know what the name for this rivalry is, but the Tennessee State Championship, let's just say that, between Tennessee and Vandy, I got the Volunteers winning this one. Okay.
And what's crazy, though, is there was a time when if you mentioned the SEC, you had the teams and you go, oh, yeah, Vandy.
Yeah,
but you can't underestimate Vandy anymore, football or basketball.
Nope. And you look at Vandy's record, and you may think it's not much, but they're playing in the hardest conference in the nation. So they're still a solid tournament team, and we'll see if they can pull off an upset in Knoxville. But I think the Volunteers will just be too good for them.
All right, that's 2. You got time? Yes, you do, for 1.
We got the All-Star weekend for NBA this weekend. We got the dunk contest. We got the 3-point contest. We got the All-Star game. So, the dunk contest is they got Mataz Buzelis from the Bulls, Stephon Castle from the Spurs, Andre Jackson from the Bucks, and then last year's dunk contest winner, Mac McClung from the G League, will be playing in it. I want to make the NBA All-Star Weekend great again. Let me just say that. I feel like it's been down in the dumps for a while. I think the last good dunk contest was 2016 between Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon. Ever since, it's just kind of been lame. And the All-Star Game in general. Remember when they actually, well, I wasn't alive, I don't think. Remember when they actually played, actual like competitive games in the All-Star Game? Like Kobe and MJ, where they actually played defense instead of just, pick up. And we'll talk about how the ratings are so low. It's because it's just a glorified pickup game, the All-Star Game. But we'll see if this year's any different. I don't know. I don't know what to expect myself, but yeah, I wish too that people would actually go to the dunk contest. Everybody's too scared to get hurt nowadays, but I mean, look back in the days like when Vince Carter was in the dunk contest, and it was much better. I feel like as a whole back then. So we'll see if this starts a trend. We're making the All-Star Game or the All-Star Weekend as a whole better, but
so it's Mazga. Make All-Star great again.
Make the All-Star great again. Yes, exactly. But yeah, that is this weekend. So we'll see if it's any better than it has been as of late. But I don't know. My expectations are low for this one.
All right. Well, listen, that's 3 and Out, the first segment of JP on Sports. Does he know his sports or what? All right, we're going to come right back. He's got time now coming up for the 2-minute warnings. And my understanding is some of it's got some cultural commentary attached to it. So you guys stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Man, saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, we're jumping right back in. Round 2 of JP on Sports. We call this the 2-minute warnings. And so he's got the ability now to run 2 minutes at a time with me keeping a timer and a buzzer and just run down through the world of sports with 2 minutes spots ready. First one, go.
Well, before I get into my 2-minute warning, I totally forgot to play my new sound effect. I made it just for you. It's a iBob sound effect. It's
iBob sound effect.
It's actually of Bruce Pearl. So
stop it, really.
Roll Tide.
You just okay. And now we're gonna move on to Dipper number 3.
But anyways, going into the first topic of the 2-minute warning, I gotta do a Super Bowl recap since this is the first show since the Super Bowl. Obviously, the Eagles blew out the Chiefs in that one, and Jalen Hurts ended up winning a Super Bowl MVP. I was not anticipating that at all. No matter who won, I thought it was going to be a pretty competitive game close to the end, but the Eagles' D-line just flat out whipped the Chiefs' O-line's butt. And they weren't blitzing. They weren't doing anything special. They were just rushing forward the whole game and were just flat out destroying them. I mean, we saw Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, both who played at Georgia, were able to get to Patrick Mahomes like crazy. He had a record high of sacks in his career, I believe, before the first half was even over. So the Eagles' defense really could have won a trophy for themselves. But Jalen Hurts played great, and he had the best game of his career, in my opinion, passing-wise. That touchdown pass to Devontae Smith was beautiful, and that was the dagger to the game.
It was.
I was happy to see Jalen Hurts get a ring after the career he's had. I mean, he's had a storybook career, and I'm glad that he was able to cap it off with the Super Bowl championship. It was awesome. And Saquon Barkley also getting his first Super Bowl ring after all of his time with the Giants. So I'm happy to see the Chiefs lose, too. How about that? Cherry on top.
Hit me some buzzer. All right, so you got it. Yeah, there you go. So I went ahead and just assumed that you burned some of your time with that silly sound effect. Let me clear the clock. Round 2, 2-minute warning, go.
So I've seen a bunch of people getting upset and whining about this NIL tax exemption bill proposal in the State House. So I figured I'd give my take on it. First of all, I did some research on this. I don't know if you're aware. So the University of Alabama's athletics department brought in $235 million last year in the 2024 year. Auburn brought in $194 million for their athletic program. And also I did even more research. So the ETF, apparently 25% of their funding is from sales tax. So that means more people in seats for these games equals more money for the state as a whole. Okay. So how about we get the best players the state can get as a whole and give Alabama a recruiting advantage in that. That doesn't mean that we can't pass other bills, like tax exemptions for, more important people than athletes, and also maybe getting rid of the income tax as a whole. That doesn't mean those bills can't happen just because this bill is happening. And truth be told, Alabama as a whole can't compete with the Texas oil money for NIL stuff. We're going to see all the recruits going to those type of schools if Alabama doesn't do something to get a better recruiting advantage. So I think this bill could actually benefit the state as a whole to get more money and revenue to the state as a whole. And like I said, pass other bills alongside with that tax exemption wise. But yeah, I think I'm in favor of this bill. I think, and plus also I heard Dale during the Grand Council mention this will be a drop in the bucket, tax exemption wise for NIL. So I'm all for it. Those are my arguments for it.
Cogent argument. Yes. I would take issue with all of it.
You would take issue. There you go.
And I'll be glad to outline when I have my own time, but right now I'm on your time, and the time is up. All right, clear the clock. All right, so you went all in on the NIL. You have a tawdry sound effect using Bruce Pearl's voice out of AI, I'm sure.
If it's not AI.
And now, pray tell, what is going to happen? Go.
So it's baseball season is coming up again. We are about to embark on spring training, and there's been a lot of eyes on the Braves spring training because both Ronald Acuna, who won the MVP in 2023, and Spencer Strider, who is one of the best pitchers in all of baseball, they both had season-ending injuries last year, pretty early on into the season. So Acuna tore his ACL and his other knee. The year before he won the MVP, he tore his other ACL. So now he's got two, quote, bad legs. So a lot of eyes have been on him, how he will recover. But he claims that he is about 90 to 95% to recovery and feels a lot better during this recovery than he did during his first stint as an ACL recovery. So that's always a good sign. And then also Snitker said, the Braves manager, that Spencer Strider has been progressing very well. His bullpens have looked pretty good so far, considering, him still recovering from an injury. So it looks like we're going to get Spencer Strider about 6 weeks into the regular season for baseball, and then Acuna, I think, about a month into the regular season. So it looks like both guys are tracking along pretty well, which I'm excited to see them both back as a Braves fan. But we got the first Braves spring training next Saturday against the Twins, but then the first spring training game in general is this upcoming Thursday. So I always like watching these spring training games. It's fun to see. I mean, obviously you don't see many of the best players playing in them, but I mean, Sunny down in Florida. I mean, I've been to a couple of spring training games as well. They're really fun. But I'm happy to see baseball is coming back. It's one of my favorite seasons to take part in because it's so long. You have something to watch every night. So, yeah, I'm excited to see how this Braves team can recover from having both of those guys hurt. It really hurt the Braves last year. So hopefully they'll make a full recovery back for this year.
Well, you were non-controversial in that 2-minute warning. And you got about 10 seconds left. I will say this: there's something about a ballpark under the lights.
Mm-hmm.
There just is. There's like the whole Field of Dreams kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right, hit the buzzer. There it is.
Here comes the music. There's my
And
buzzer.
there's the music. That's it. JP on Sports ran it right to the wire. Oh, all the way into the red zone. Okay, that's JP on Sports every Friday. Coming up next week, new podcast coming. Yeah, check it out. It's going to be Out of Right Field with JP. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, coming up next. Getting some text messages and catching up. Y'all stay tuned. Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show goes like from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, even all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn. And yes, even some big old patches of Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. All right, we're in the final section here, the go home time. Let me get a few text messages and all that. And before I do, I got to tell you, there's a lot of happenings here. You heard me mention a while ago about JP starting another podcast, and there is so much content now at Rightside that it's like trying to keep up with Doge. I mean, it's just stuff happening daily almost, and I can't even begin to tell you what all we got going on behind the scenes. But the reality is, it's just fun. And so if you want to see conservative commentary from a variety of angles, that's what we've got. Just so you know, yesterday, the Liberty Minute, latest edition.
Unfortunately, Jared's traveling, but we're back.
Back next week.
Next week
okay.
we'll be back on that.
All right. So yeah, we have a variety of podcasts today. The latest edition of Birdman's podcast, Right Click, is out. Sunday, we expect another edition put out there for you from Emily Jones with the Controversial Mom podcast. Mine comes out on Wednesdays, the Right Philosophy podcast. JP's will be in the lineup on Out of Right Field very shortly. You got a logo? You want to throw your logo up on the screen? You're welcome to it, man.
I have to pull it up real quick, but yeah.
It's in it's another batch somewhere. But
I'll be doing those on Monday evenings as well.
Outstanding. We got so much stuff happening here, and we're just proud of it. And thank you all for making it happen. Because I was telling somebody today that literally almost 4 years ago, when I got the call to see whether we'd start a radio show, I had no idea it would become a media company, and that's what it is now. Rightside Media is the parent company that Rightside Radio is just one production of. We are now regional in terms of our radio presence. We have op-eds that go out to like 18 different newspapers around the region, and we have 5 podcasts. And then we have the audio version of the podcast of the show that we put up every day that's pushing 300,000 downloads. It's just crazy cool. All that to say, you can find out everything about us and what we do and what we stand for at our website, rightsidemedia.org, to include, oh, by the way, the new merchandise store, which just went gangbusters this week. Thank you to all of you who ordered tons of things like T-shirts, coffee mugs, hats, and even our highball bulletproof influence glasses that have the 308 round embedded in the glass itself, and it says Rightside Media Bulletproof Influence. Just crazy cool. Loving it. Let's see what we got here. Birch from New Hope. He says, we need closed primaries. Okay, that's out of left field, but all right. Didn't see that one coming. Thank you, Birch. He says he thinks the Democrats are what got Ivy elected. No, I don't think so. Lazy Republicans got Ivy elected. That's what. If she didn't have to try hard, she's a very popular governor, but you can remain popular when you don't do something controversial. And so, listen, I'm not going to mince words. I love Kay Ivey personally. I think the world of her. I've had a chance to get to know her some over the years, but I say with all candor that I do believe that she is lost her mojo, and she's in office right now, past the ability to really be like gainful on the issues. Do I think she's still plugged in? Sure. Do I think she's still going to work every day? Sure. Do I think that she is probably not leading the charge like a DeSantis? Absolutely.
By the way, I got my new logo up here if you want to show it off real quick.
Yeah, let's switch gears. Take me out of that mode and throw that up on the screen real quick. So, yeah, new logo. If you're watching the live stream, here's the new logo coming up for JP's new podcast, Out of Right Field. You got it? Throw it up there, man.
Yep. Oh, I think you're on a bit of delay.
Oh, I'm on a bit of a delay, watching it on the delay over here on the screen. It's always kind of weird. I move my hand, and my hand doesn't move on the screen. Yeah, it does look good. It looks real good. Man, that's cool, dude. I'm proud for that. All right, go figure. Jeremy from Madison just says Ivy got elected because she had very little chance of having a sex scandal. Thank you, Jeremy. Oh, look, our hater's back. By the way, just so you know, our hater has a name now. The guy who sends in the text messages that we typically can't read, she is known as Shag Nasty the Atheist now. So Shag Nasty the Atheist has texted in and said, gonna start calling Trump and Elon Captain Fascist and the brown shirt cowboy. Woo. Thank you, Shag Nasty. Have a great day. You are much loved. Brian from Huntsville says, dunk contest, best one ever, Spud Webb versus Wilkins. That was...
All right, it may have been Wilkins versus Moses Malone, I think.
The fact that Spud Webb could dunk at all was also epic.
Can I just say, my dad made me watch that at one point growing up. He showed me the dunk contest of Spud Webb dunking. It's pretty impressive. It's pretty nuts.
Have you ever seen the movie where Billy Crystal, I forgot which one it was. Everybody, was it something about, was it Sally? Anyway, he was with, bottom line, Billy Crystal was in a movie and he played a basketball referee. And, Billy Crystal's like 5'6". And so he's constantly yelling up at all these players until there's one time when he's standing there with Spud Webb and he goes, "You're the only one I can relate to." Steve from Huntsville says, JP's not old enough to remember Spud winning the dunk contest, and I think he was only 5'10". Yep, there it is. Dave from Madison says, JP, is there any chance of Oklahoma making the NCAA tournament? Well, JP's on the phone with somebody calling in right now, so when he gets back, I'll ask him what he thinks. Thomas from Athens says, the iBob's good. Consider the first SEC Classic. Hoping we get more like this. Yep, well, I do too, which means that we're a basketball state, right? Scott from Athens says, what did he send me? Oh, he says, he sends a picture of RFK Jr. doing push-ups with a gallon of raw milk, and it says, so good it makes me want to do push-ups. Okay. By the way, I don't know if you saw it or not, Thomas from Athens is all for the iBob. He likes the iBob.
I think it's I don't buy into the Iron Bowl is just a football game name. I think it's Alabama Auburn. You think Alabama Auburn and you think Iron Bowl. So
and then the other text that you were on the phone for, Dave from Madison wants to know, is there any chance of Oklahoma making the NCAA?
Yeah. Sorry, turn my mic off. Yeah, I would say I think right now they're a 9th seed in the projected. They're in the hardest conference in the nation. So any win in that conference is going to be a good win. So yeah, I think they're going to be around a 9 to 10 seed, Oklahoma.
All right. Well, listen. Apparently you can catch JP with questions out of the blue, and he still answers them. All right, we're going to take a caller on the line here momentarily. Ricky from Decatur. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Phil. Got a question for you to munch on over the weekend.
All right.
Chevron, how does it come in to play with bureaucrats spending all this money?
We haven't even talked about this at all, Ricky. Where are we at right now?
I was just giving you something to munch on. I was just looking at, they say the president can't go in and look at stuff here left and right, but then again, Chevron pretty much says that we just you can't bureaucrats can't spend money. So I was just wondering where it tackled into. I know it's a different topic and everything, but I was just curious.
Well, I appreciate it, Ricky. In fact, we'll probably do some stuff first of the week on some of the spending and the limitations on spending, and I appreciate the call, man. Thank you very much.
All right.
All
Thanks.
right. Take care. You know who I haven't heard from in a while? And I'll say this before we go to the break. Kareem.
I know. I noticed that too.
I said it last week, but I'm going to say it again. Kareem, you're missed. We want to hear from you. Tell us what's going on. And yeah, there's that. By the way, there were 2 breaking news pieces that went out today. The U.S. Army is now up live on Twitter. I think it's been there a while, obviously, but I didn't pay much attention. But 2 tweets went out from the official U.S. Army X account just in the last hour. One says Fort Liberty is renamed Fort Bragg effective immediately, and the U.S. Army team is now moving out on the renaming process. There's that one. Can I have some applause? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, that's good. And then the other one that I think is worthy of note is that the U.S. Army also tweeted out just about an hour and a half ago, the U.S. Army will no longer allow transgender individuals to join the military and will stop performing or facilitating any procedures associated with gender transition for service members. Stay tuned for more details. More applause. Can I have more applause? Those are both worthy. We do want our Army back. We absolutely want it back.
By the way, speaking of naming of stuff, did you see that AP has been banned from any press briefings because they refuse to acknowledge the Gulf of America?
Come on. Google acknowledges the Gulf of America.
I know.
You can go to Google Maps and it's now Gulf of, and AP won't do it, huh?
Nope. And of course they're calling this. They're freaking out about this as a free speech infringement. And Caroline Levitt said, "Nope, we're not going to condone lies. So you're just lying. It's not the Gulf of Mexico anymore. It's the Gulf of America.
Yeah.
So your refusal to acknowledge that, and guess what? We'll put somebody else in there that will stick to the fact." So.
That's like demanding that we use certain pronouns.
Yeah.
It's not the way it works.
And I'll be interested to see with it back to Fort Bragg if Democrats continue to call it Fort Liberty.
Well, good luck, because the sign on the gate says something different.
Yeah.
And so does the letterhead on the commanding general stationery. And oh, by the way, so does every service member who lives. And you know what? I'm going to tell you this. I bet if we went and ran a poll of all the service members currently stationed at Fort Bragg and all the veterans who have ever served at Fort Bragg, you would find that they would, pretty much to a man and woman, would say, we're fine with it being called Bragg, and we thought Liberty was goofy.
But they don't matter, Phil. They're all racists, and they defend the colonial America, so their opinion doesn't matter.
Did you just go colonial America? All right, we're taking a break. We'll take a break right now. We'll come right back. Y'all, it has been a full, some more kind of day, but that's what we do here on Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Man, pulling pins on truth grenades. That's what we're doing. Several more text messages to jump on. Marcus from Huntsville says, I hate to sound too Orwellian, but it was Fort Bragg. It is Fort Bragg. It's always been Fort Bragg. That is not Orwellian. That is just truth, my brother. So thank you, Marcus. Appreciate you. Brian from Huntsville. We have 3 Americas around that Gulf, North, South, and Central. That's right. I mean, it's like saying it's the Gulf of the Americas, but, take it for what it's worth. It's just not the Gulf of, they don't own it. It's not the Gulf of Mexico.
Apparently they're not too happy about that. I saw a report.
Do we care?
No. I saw a report that Scheinbaum was exploring options to get around it. They're not too happy.
I tell you what, Mexico, you're welcome to call it whatever you want. The rest of the world's going to call it the Gulf of America.
You can call it whatever you want. You just won't be correct.
Yeah. And, just so you know, we're not asking for you to be the 51st state. So there's that. Jeff from Athens says, get the Army back. He said, remember when the decline began? It was with the Clintons. Don't ask, don't tell. That was also when the Army sleeping bag could also serve as a fruit roll-up. Okay. I just realized what I was reading. So let's just stop that right now. Thank you, Jeff. John from Huntsville says, JP comes in last place today. I know you blew it with that sound effect.
I know why. Yeah.
JP comes in last place today with his first ever F for the worst ever sound effect he's ever created, for being 100% incorrect on the NIL Alabama tax exemption, and for basically saying that Alabama players won the Super Bowl for the Eagles, which means that today's co-winners are the amazing Admiral Kent Davis and the spectacular Phil Williams with an A++. Congratulations. It was not even close, man. It was not even close.
Was he talking about this sound effect?
Roll Tide.
That's... You should not use AI on somebody's voice like that. That is
AI.
just so bad. It's so obnoxious. It's not good.
He said it.
By the way, we had a call a minute ago that asked about the Chevron and kept saying, well, Chevron and spending. And I got to tell you, it did spark a memory. So now I'm assuming that what that caller was saying, and by the way, the caller, I just dropped my name. Apparently my short-term memory is not working. But the bottom line is the caller said,
it was Ricky.
It was Ricky from Decatur. Thank you. Asked if Chevron could affect spending. All right, Ricky, I'm going to go ahead and assume you meant the reversal of the Chevron doctrine. So we talked about it on the show before. Lawyer Phil here for a minute as we wrap up the show. The Chevron doctrine was this kind of gross situation in the law that came into effect like in the 80s. It was a Chevron case versus Natural Resources Defense Council or something like that, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And what it basically came out, the ruling that came out of it established the idea, basically the concept under the law, that bureaucrats are allowed to interpret law if Congress's intent is not otherwise already clear. In other words, sometimes legislators don't do a good job passing their bills, and it leaves a gray area. Or they pass a bill that is timely and on point for its time, but 10 years later, the language is a little more archaic or the situation has developed, and so you wonder, does this get included? I don't know. And so bureaucrats were allowed to just simply interpret. I'm thinking that what he's saying right now is his point is some of the spending we're seeing coming out of D.C., where they are slinging money, like just slinging money at everything from illegal immigrant hotels to green new steel and all the stuff that was that protected under Chevron? And let's keep in mind too, Chevron was overturned last year. So Chevron was overturned in a case called Loper Bright versus Raimondo. And it's like, I think it's like the fall of last year or summer of last year. The bottom line is this: the whole Chevron thing went away. Chevron went away, which meant that bureaucrats no longer have the ability to simply say, yeah, we interpret law to be a certain thing. That's why the Department of Education was allowed to say, Title IX that protects women, we believe it's who identifies as women. That's why they thought they could get away with it, because Chevron gave them the ability to interpret the law. Now, with the reversal of Chevron, they no longer have that luxury. They don't, because they will have to go back to Congress for clarification, or the courts will have to rule in a certain way. So Chevron defense went away. which means that all of this ridiculousness that we saw of new reinterpretations and imaginations of the law just went away too. So I hope I answered your question, Ricky. That's where I think you were headed now that I look back on it, and I apologize for not grasping it more, although it was off topic. There was that.
It was a curveball, so you had to take a little bit of time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Shag Nasty the Atheist has texted in again and says Chevron is because Congress is full of anti-scientific idiots. Okay. Thanks, Shag Nasty. All right, listen, you guys are an amazing audience, and you've given us a whole lot to be thankful for around here. This has been some more kind of a week. I hope that you're all going to have a good Valentine's Day. Like, even if there's not somebody personally in your life right now, just recognize the moment and have yourself a good evening, all right? But if there is someone in your life currently, do not forget that you can tell them you love them every single day. And you know what? You should. Don't say it on the day you got married or the day you started the relationship and then come back years later and say, well, I told you back then. No. Tell them and remind them. Why? Because that's the way it works. And telling and reminding is what establishes it over and over and over again. I'm going to tell you right now, my sweet love, Charlene, I've been married to her for 38 years, and I wouldn't change a thing, baby. And if you're still listening, I'm coming home here in a few minutes. I look forward to seeing you. All right, you guys, the music's playing. That means I got to say it. There's more of us than there are them. God's still on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you Monday.